Our world needs more mindfulness. It calms us. It allows creativity. It's the thing that people are paying thousands of dollars for psychologists to help them to do.
Hello and welcome to Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. I am Dr. Antonella Kaler, and I am on a mission to find out exactly what it takes to build an indestructible foundation and achieve our best reality. I am thrilled to bring you stories of inspiring women who were fierce and relentless when pursuing their passions, who did not blame their struggles on so-called character flaws, and who took control to lead extraordinary lives. If you're a woman who is tired of feeling like your life is merely a product of cause and effect, and you are ready to be the woman that causes the effect, keep listening to learn the necessary insights to navigate life's toughest challenges, break through the most disheartening plateaus, and unleash your inner alpha woman. Hello, Alphas, and welcome to another episode of Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Lynn Gribble. Dr. Lynn is not only a quote-unquote accidental academic, she was also an international ice skater, is an award-winning author and university lecturer, entrepreneur, and a mother. Now, if you are not one of the 12 million people who recently watched Dr. Lynn's speech about the multitasking myth, you absolutely must. In fact, once I saw that video, I knew I had to talk with Dr. Lynn herself to get her to share her insight with my alphas one-on-one. So, if you have ever felt like you are struggling with productivity or innovation, keep listening so Dr. Lynn can share the one thing, the one single change that can enable you to grow in any aspect of your life. My alphas, I am thrilled to introduce a spectacular alpha woman, Dr. Lynn Gribble. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, all the way from beautiful Sydney, from amazing Australia. Thank you so much. Now, before we kind of jump into, I had a guest question and just our general topics of discussion, could you please share with our audience a little bit more about what you do, what your purpose is, and why you're passionate about it, and how life has kind of led you to what you do today?
Thanks, Antonella. I work as I call myself an accidental academic because I work in a university, and as well as working in a university, I run a full-service consulting firm where I do everything from HR advice to public speaking, and part of my underpinnings of all of that is I believe that if we can become more self-aware, if we can work out the things that drive us, the things that tempt us, the things that don't support us, then we can become more empowered to actually be our best selves. So I think that often what happens is that people say, well, this is just who I am. And I go, well, what if you could understand who you are and see how it serves you, and also see when it's not serving you, so that you get greater choice in that? Because oftentimes people will say, well, I don't like working with that person because they're prickly. And I say, well, their behaviour is prickly. I'm sure they're probably fundamentally nice if you actually got to know them under a different circumstance. So I really want to work with people so that they can become the masters of their own life and also guide their own life in a way that is useful for them.
Mm-hmm. And why is this purpose so important to you? How did you get pulled kind of in this direction? Did you have an aha moment, or was it just kind of a culmination of all of your experiences?
I think that life throws you certain challenges and you start to sort of look at those challenges in different ways. And I think that I was very, very fortunate. I've done a number of different things, and my life started as a professional ice skater, and so that leads you to understand a lot of things about yourself. But when I moved across and started working in the corporate world, I found a great job, and I worked in that great job. And it was during a time when after that I was made redundant. I'd never actually thought of a job outside of that job, if that makes sense. So yes. I had made the conscious decision to stop being a professional skater, and I had gone into this job and I'd loved it, and the people I worked with were my friends. And so when it all ended, I was really questioning, what will I do? And there were many things I could go and do, but there weren't many things I wanted to do. And I thought that that was really interesting. So I started to say, what would happen if I could go to work every day and it never felt like work? Because I'd been really lucky to have those two situations where it didn't ever feel like work. So, what a great time. I'm traveling the world. I'm teaching children to skate. I'm doing my great passion all day. And then, you decide you're going to get what I call a real job in inverted commas. And then I was being paid to travel and look after people and make this happen and create amazing experiences where things could never have been imagined that they could see. And people would say, wow, I've just seen fireworks on a beach, or, my car has been parked in front of the Sydney Opera House and I picked it up there. And that was my job, was to make things happen that you only sort of thought would happen in the movies. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I really thought about, well, what were those things? And I thought, underneath both those things, what really became clear was I was very good at finding out what would excite people or how people could do something. And so I started to study in that area and went on and did my PhD in that area. And it's interesting because I've recently connected with a number of people who I taught as children to skate. And they sort of have talked about how I believed in them and always talked about how they could find their best. And it wasn't about competing with someone else, but finding out what you could do and doing it to the best of your ability. And so
competing with yourself.
Yeah. So, competing with yourself is a really important game to play. When you start comparing, if I compare myself to you, we're on two different paths, and our paths will cross, and they might, travel together for a little while, and then they might separate for a little while, but I'm not you and you're not me. And so we have unique talents. It wouldn't matter how much you taught me to do what you do, or I taught you to do what I do. Our unique talents would take us through to do that differently. So people are so frightened about sharing who they are and what they do without recognizing that in actual fact, who they are and what they do is special individually and then special collectively. And so we need to be really confident to take that into how we work. And that won't work for everywhere. And there's a space to take feedback and to say, gee, I need to adjust this. But I will not be the perfect person for every person. Some people will hear my message and say, I think that's rubbish. Now, I can invest a whole lot of time in that, but maybe it's just not the time for them to hear that message, or maybe my message doesn't align to where they're traveling. So, over 12 million people say the message that I shared last week was valuable for them. So I have to concentrate on that. And
it's almost 13 million now, actually.
It's 14 million, yeah.
Yes, and that it's funny because reviewing that video and actually kind of ties into this dream lifestyle that you describe, and that's what so many of us want, right? Is to be able to just go out there and see the world and travel, and then somehow also have our dream job and be able to do it on the beach while relaxing. Have all of those things together at once. So recently, or at least I think fairly recently, there's been this huge uprisal of just online entrepreneurs trying to get in and into a very kind of over-cluttered marketplace and get their voice heard. But a lot of them, they're just kind of keep posting on social media. They keep trying to engage an audience. And it really resonated with me, that whole concept of thinking that you're busy, but you're actually not. Now, if somebody's thinking about maybe becoming a coach or a trainer or doing something like that, pursuing a passion, a job that's maybe a little bit more digital, how do you think they can stay productive without having this false sense of productivity just because, they're posting Instagram stories 24 hours a day, but, what good is that?
Yeah. I think you've really got to know what the outcome is that you're looking for. When I talk to people, some people will say, I've been busy all day. And other people will say, I've been busy all day and achieved nothing. And I always think it's that person who's much clearer on what they were hoping to get done in the day. And I was talking once to a psychologist, and I said, I've been so busy and achieved nothing. And we were just talking professionally, about the day and what we'd been doing. And this person said to me, well, maybe you didn't achieve what you set out to achieve, but I'm sure you achieved something. And it was a really good moment of me stopping and going, actually, that is a great reminder. Every day I achieve something, and some days have to be about achieving nothing other than maybe having coffee or supporting somebody or, And then the days when I set out to achieve something, then I set those tasks as goals, and those goals are very clear. They're very specific. It's not I'm going to post on my Facebook page, but it's what am I posting on today with the intention of reaching these people, talking to those people, doing this, what is my outcome for doing that? It's not just an activity. And then measure, did that activity that I did reach that outcome? If not, why not? Adjust, do whatever. So it's everything has a purpose. It's not just this collection of activities that we do. So I was sort of laughing before our conversation this morning. I went, so my regular morning, most mornings, is clear the email, which will take, a certain amount of time, or at least know what it's going to take to clear the next tranche of that. But mainly my email is cleared within the first half an hour of a day. It doesn't mean all the actions have been taken, but that then sets the course of how else my day needs to be played out around what else I planned. I can't plan a day that's 8:30 till 5 or, even 7 till 7, because there will always be things that come in and disrupt that amount of time. That's the age that we live in now. So if I put in 12 hours of activities, then guess what? I have to have an extra 2 hours to work, because there will be other things that will come in that need to be done, and time will be important. So far better to plan 5 or 6 hours of activity, put those 2 hours in as part of how the day works. And then if they're bigger than that, then people expect that you're not going to get them done within a day.
So basically be realistic. And if it's you are the type of person that wants to post on social media in terms to grow a following, maybe post less but add some value to your audience versus just kind of post whatever, and use your time wisely.
And also, you don't have to be continually on it, because the world is now 24/7. And if in this globalized world, in this digitized world, it's not realistic to have something happening 24/7 unless you're going to put somebody in another country to be answering it overnight or to be answering it first thing in the morning. And if that's all you're doing all the time, then you're not actually doing the next, you're not thinking about the next thing, you're not creating the next thing. You can't innovate, you can't be creative, you can't get that space. I took 6 weeks off in the middle of the year and was largely uncontactable. And it was amazing how many times when I did check in, I would see these emails that said, well, if you felt like it. And I wrote back to it, I don't feel like it. I actually am really calm on holidays with my family, doing other things to actually spark my next piece of creativity. And I was on a conference and, various different things. And I said, so I'm completely present with what I'm doing. I'm not doing this and that. I'm just doing this. And we sort of keep thinking people can squeeze more and more and more in their day. And all that happens is people are burned out. They say, I'm trying to care for a family, and I'm trying to get an education, and I'm trying to have a great job. And you can have it all, but not all at once. And it's not realistic. We need to also have those times that are just fun, or those times that are just down times, not with other people and not being bombarded. And then think about things like blue light and, how technology is impacting our eyes and our brains and all of that. And you go, whoa, you've got to stop, and we've got to take control of this, Otherwise, people are so frightened about, things like artificial intelligence. They go, don't worry about that. Become in control of what you're doing now. And the intelligence already exists. For a long time, our credit cards know what we spend, our loyalty cards know what we buy. So worry less about that and about what Google and everything knows about you, and say, am I being in control of this? Am I turning off my Google Home when I'm going to bed at night, for example?
This actually ties in, that's spot on. Sorry to interrupt you there. I got excited because this ties in actually perfectly with the question from our audience member, from Tanya Zabroda from Ottawa. She wants to know if you have any suggestions. She realizes that she needs to break the habit of constantly checking social media on the phone. She uses it as a form of stress relief, but then she just can't put it down and ends up spending more time on her phone doing nothing and wasting valuable time, even if she should be working on something that requires her more immediate attention. And she's just wondering if you have any suggestions on how to break out of that cycle.
I do think it's interesting that we have our email constantly running in the background, or our phones are constantly on. You know, there was a time, maybe in our parents' time, where you had to give children 20 cents so that if they were walking home and they needed to call you, they could stop at the public phone. And guess what? If mum and dad weren't home, they just didn't get you. There wasn't an answering machine even to say, hey, mum and dad, I'm lost, right? So we've started to confuse this convenience of being able to contact people with a necessity. You know, what happens? Unless somebody is in a life and death situation, you turning off your phone will not kill somebody, right? And so people just need to turn their phones off, turn their notifications off, close their email. You know, for me, I will finish my email and I will turn my email off while I'm writing, for example, because I know if it's really urgent, somebody will phone me. But most people would expect that if they sent me an email, I will answer them within 24 hours, not within 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so I don't need to have those constantly on. We don't have phones at our dinner table. We don't have our phones or emails after the end of the day, which is about so for me, it's about 6, because I go, that's a fair work day. I have a teenager, so for her, it's, as we sit down for dinner, about 7, so that's it. Because really there's nothing that urgent now.
Well, it creates a false sense of urgency, right? When you see the notifications, it's a mix of, excitement of, oh, something's happening, I don't want to miss it, that fear of missing out, and a false sense of urgency because it's blinking, and you're constantly sucked into it. But it's an illusion, right? Like you said, unless it's a real emergency, in which case, somebody will probably try to give you a phone call and not send you a text. It's probably just, somebody liked a photo on your Facebook or something that can wait. It's okay.
Yeah. And the other thing is that even if it is an emergency, often, unless you are the primary caregiver for somebody who's, facing this emergency situation, then we need to also build the resilience that if you can't get that person, who's the person who's going to help? So it's interesting as somebody who teaches, I have a teenager who can't get me if I'm giving a lecture. If I'm on stage, there's no texting and saying, hey, Mum, I can't find the bus or the Sheba or whatever, She has to work out the next thing, right? Now, that might be to call somebody else that she knows that's available, or you become resourceful, because what we're doing is that we're not allowing our children to grow up. Because if we're always answering and our teams are not then going on to develop that resilience, if we're constantly there, that's micromanaging at the worst level. So, make a decision, run with that, live with the consequences of that decision, turn your phone off and eat your lunch and really focus on those flavors, and you'll be surprised how mindful you can become. And this is, our world needs more mindfulness. It calms us. It allows creativity. It's the thing that people are paying thousands of dollars for psychologists to help them to do. Really, if you need that help, I'm all for getting professional help. But we are also one of the only living species that can make choice. And so making a choice to turn your phone off. And if that makes you feel anxious, turning your email off or whatever, then just noticing that and then distracting yourself to do something else for that 20 minutes. Read, watch a movie, talk, have a conversation. The richness of conversations that happen when phones are not involved. And you don't need a photograph. It happens whether there's a photograph or not. I mean, I was raised in America, and so I celebrated Thanksgiving last week, and it was interesting. A friend of mine said, here's some photos I took. Clearly I didn't take enough. It was about 4 or 5 photos, a couple of the table, a couple of them as a couple. And I went, there were no photos taken all night because everybody was 100% present about being around that table and sharing the meal and talking about what had been happening over the last year, because these people come together annually, with me. So how lovely. Nobody needed to take a photo. Nobody needs to post on social media about it.
I will confess, when my daughter was born, that first month, I probably took about 100,000 photos.
And we do, right? Firstborn children. Oh, look, they're blowing a bubble. Oh, look, they're smiling. But you know what's interesting is that we've moved from just taking those photos to feeling like we need to show it to everyone. And because often what we're doing is we're looking for the validation externally instead of internally. So when we start to actually say, on what measure do I think this is good? And so the online world is fantastic, and it's allowed people to be connected that otherwise couldn't speak or wouldn't see each other. But we have to recognize the difference between our big F friends and our little F friends. So our big F friends are the people, less than 10 people, probably 5 people, who are really in our life, who have our backs, who support us, who care about us, who know about us, who when we share with them what our children did or what we did, they are genuinely so proud and excited for us and with us. And then there's probably another 10 or 20 people who are really nice people who you catch up with, and they're friends and they're mates and they help you out. And they do care about that, but not at the same deep level. And then there's probably another tranche of people, and when I say tranche of people, because it could be 50 and it could be 1,000, who, would ring you if they needed something and expect you to help, but if you rang them, they maybe wouldn't give that same help back. And then there's all these random people who say, look, I want to be your friend, or I want to be connected to you on LinkedIn. And I go, well, if I don't know you, why would I be connected to you on LinkedIn? Because all of a sudden you're getting the kudos from knowing me. And that's not okay, because when somebody came and said to me, would you employ this person? I'd have to say, well, I don't know them. Well, you're connected to them. Well, no, not really. They just asked. So instead, I've really used those sorts of places. But LinkedIn for me is professional. They're people who I've worked with. I know I can say, yes, this was my experience of being around them. Otherwise, no, they're not a connection. And on Facebook, obviously, there are people who will like what I'm doing professionally, and sure, I'm very happy for them to be connected. But then there's my close group of friends, and we don't need that to be on Facebook, and we don't need that to be on Insta, and we don't need that to be anywhere else.
Yeah, so then especially on Facebook, you go through and you have maybe hundreds of these friends, but how many of these people do you even actually talk to on a regular basis? But then people see the number and they feel good. They feel, I'm so social. But in reality, they might have not talked to the vast majority of these people for years.
Well, they may not even know them if they fell over them. So we've just used the term friend has morphed. Mm-hmm. And so we haven't grown up with that change of the use of language.
That's fantastic. I actually do a regular pruning of my own Facebook, because I was starting to actually get annoyed that it was getting carried over in that direction. And it's been quite helpful. I was getting overwhelmed with the random amount of people. And like you said, they're just connections, and and frankly, some person that I've never heard of. It's nice that they went on vacation to Aruba last year, but I don't particularly care, right? So a regular Facebook pruning really does the benefit.
And it's just taking up your energy, because you don't need to know that they went on holidays to Aruba. You don't need all that other information. So, what you do need is, if you've got, family elsewhere in the world and you don't get to talk to them all the time, it's great. You can say, look, here's where they are today. When I went on my vacation, everybody said, will you share it via Insta or Facebook? I said, I'm very happy to share it with my immediate friends on Facebook. And that's what we did. And so people knew where we were. They knew we were safe. They knew what we were doing. Sometimes we were catching up with mutual friends to say hi. Look, perfect, right? But I don't need to broadcast to the world where I am and what I'm doing today because I'm living it. I'm not having to vicariously live it. So, authenticity is about, what is true for you. And I think that we need to come back to this space of that we're not looking for Insta celebrity. We're not, we are comfortable in our own skin for doing what we do and doing it well. And that will always support us better than looking for external approval. Actors, for example, have to train to internally monitor how it's going, not to wait for the audience to laugh or not to wait for the audience to respond, because if they are waiting for that, they will be so focused externally that they won't actually be able to create their performance internally. And so I think it's really interesting that here's one of the basic tricks of the trade for an actor. Anyone who's, doing anything in that space, if they're only working off the external, then it doesn't work. So for many of the people who are working in Instagram or Facebook and they think that it's all about that external stimulus, they've got it wrong. It's the ones who start out with purpose and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, and then I'll listen to the following and give them more of what they want, but I'm still staying on purpose, because people will say, well, I want this and then I want that. And you might go, well, that's great, but it's actually not who I am. So, but if we're constantly ducking and weaving and changing, then we're not staying true to that path. And we can't please all the people all of the time. So having that.
That hits the nail on the head. That's a really resonated message. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I don't want to be eating up too much of your time. I'm watching the clock here. I know you have meetings coming up. So I do want to squeeze in our last final question that I hassle all of my guests with. If you have a book that you're really passionate about that had a profound impact that you think our audience should read, if you could share that with us, that would be great. And then I'm not going to be taking up any more of your time. I know you're in a rush. So let's wrap up the last few minutes, and that's going to be it.
Mm-hmm. So when you asked me that question, 2 books came to mind, and they're very old books. And one was a book called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And it sort of starts or sort of finishes up by sort of saying, when you go out into the world, hold hands, look both ways before you cross, and take care of each other. And I think that is such a powerful message. When I go out into the world, I always make sure there's somebody who's virtually holding my hand, that I look both ways before I cross to the best of my ability. And I always try and take care of the people around me and hope that I have people around me who will take care of me. And so that's been a very powerful thing. And the other one is a book that's a little bit sort of down the same path, but had a profound effect because it was called I think it's called Dare to Ask. It might be called the Aladdin Factor. And what it was it really talked about what we ask for. And so, if I ask you to do something, you can say yes or no. It's just a yes or no. But I have to risk to say, can you do this, or will you do it? And then if you say no, it's just no, right? And then I can choose to ask another person who maybe my choice needs to be better as somebody who will help, and then recognize that maybe there was a constraint that you couldn't, or maybe you are not going to be a person, not you specifically, but that person's not going to be a person who will help. And so I think that reminder to be brave to ask is a really important thing. And it is about being brave in a way that you ask with little expectation. And so I have tried to create business relationships that are like that. I find that the ones that have become great are very reciprocal. So, they'll ask, I'll ask, and we all go forward together. The people who are always asking and never then reciprocate, I go, that's fine. That's not what I need to be around, because that's just the energy vampire. And so it's just balancing that. But I think that those those books that bring you into the moment, and it's, I read a lot for pleasure. I read a lot for knowledge because it's the nature of what I do. But those two things I think have really guided my life and have helped me to have people around me who are good for me, and I can be good for them because it's not about everybody.
Wow, those sound wonderful. I actually started to read the Everything I Need to Know I've Already Learned in Kindergarten pretty recently. I'm only in the beginning, though. I need some time to settle down. I have a 2-year-old. Settling down to read a book with a nice cup of tea is sometimes out of the question.
Absolutely. 30-second rule sometimes for
exactly
a mum of a younger one.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it. This has been a wonderful chat, and I'm going to make sure that all of your resources, and if people want to find out how to reach out to you to find your content, that they can do that. That's going to be available. But I really appreciate your time for sitting down and sharing some of the wonderful insight that you shared with our audience today.
Thanks so much.
Hey Alphas, it's Dr. Antonella from Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. I cannot wait to bring you more incredible stories and exceptional insights from women who made an impact. So join me on this journey. Subscribe and comment with nominations for guests you would like featured next. I want to deliver content that ignites a spark in you, so your feedback is extremely important to me. To connect with me and to get the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.thefemaleproject.net or add me on Instagram at dr.antonella. Thank you for listening and stay tuned.